Hello, Hannah. As you can see, I'm back at school. Yay. It's nice seeing my friends again, but I'm really not ready for school yet. I'm not in school mode at all. I spent yesterday reading Hunger Games and today reading the second one. They're good. I'm not gonna lie, they are good books. The writing, it's good. It doesn't bug me. Occasionally, it's not exactly what I would do with the writing, and almost never in the sentences do I get to that point of, oh my god, this is amazing writing, which I get with some other books, for example, John Green's books, but it's not bad, because if it was bad, it would distract me. So, I mean, it's good writing, and the plot's awesome, and I really like the characters. Katniss is flawed, and because of that, she's easy to identify with. She's a believable character. Probably my biggest criticisms would be with the second book, I don't think I would have done what she did with the middle of it. Like, I liked where it started. You know, her dealing, like, with the tour thing and PETA. And I liked where it ended, with them finding out a lot of stuff. And, oh, conspiracy, that kind of thing. But in the middle, having basically the same thing from the first book again, that's not what I would have done. Then the other thing is, when it comes to PETA and Gale, I'm not really sure what the difference between them is. Like, she's known one of them longer and all that, but when it comes to just them as people, they seem very similar. But overall, good books, highly recommend them. Very difficult to put down. Very difficult to put down. She's very clever about where she ends her chapters, and you know, it's fairly big font. It's not that many pages. You're like, oh, I can do a little further. And then you know, stay up till 2:30 because you're finishing Hunger Games. Besides Hunger Games, one other thing I've been doing, you know, instead of school, which is what I should be starting on, is watching the Twilight Zone on Netflix. It's a good show. It's like a really good show. Okay, so the Twilight Zone is a series that was made from 1959 to 1964. I'm not talking about the remake from the 80s because I haven't seen that and I've heard it sucks. I'm talking about the original. Rod Serling, the creator of the show, he did pretty much everything. He wrote 92 of the show's 156 episodes. And with each episode, he did the beginning narration and the end narration. In case you don't know what the Twilight Zone is, and I didn't until I happened to find a VHS recording of a marathon of Twilight Zone episodes up at our cabin, which was really random, but introduced me to the show. It's a show from the 50s, and it's black and white, and each episode is sort of a little, like, sci-fi short story, because none of the episodes are connected to each other. They're all just their own little thing, and they always involve some kind of fantasy or science fiction element. A lot of the acting on the show is actually better than acting nowadays, and when it comes to the effects, yes, sometimes there's something cheesy, but for the most part, the show is very aware of what it can do and what it can't do, considering the time period. So, for example, there was an episode where this guy kept changing his face, like he could completely become another person. And what they would do is they would, like, film him, and then he would, you know, leave the room for 2 seconds, and he would come out a completely different person. Okay, now obviously he's a different actor, we all know this, but I'm actually glad they did something like that instead of, like, awkwardly making his face morph and having it be really lame because it was from the 50s. What's amazing about the show, though, is the writing. It's, like, really good. Like, when it comes to plots, sometimes the episodes tend to be a little more slow-paced than shows nowadays, because I think older TV and movie things, like, they just tend to be more slow-paced, but once you get in the feel of it, it's not annoying at all, and they're just, like, the plots are so creative. They're plots where, like, yes, they're sci-fi and fantasy and stuff, but they tend to make you sort of think about something bigger, and oftentimes, even though there is some kind of sci-fi or fantasy element, that's actually not the interesting part of the plot. The interesting part is usually how the normal people react, or how it affects what we do. Dialogue within each episode is good, and you know, you get occasionally monologues within each episode, and those are good, but what's really great is Rod Serling's random narrator monologues at the beginning and end of each episode. So I'm going to read a couple of those to you. Imagine this done in a much cooler dude voice. The tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicions destroy, and a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all its own. For the children, and the children yet unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone. Do 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 do. A toy telephone, an act of faith, a set of improbable circumstances all combined to probe a mystery, to fathom a death, to send a facet of light into a dark after-region, to be believed or disbelieved, depending on your preference, a fact or a fantasy, a substance or a shadow, but all of it is very much a part of the Twilight Zone. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. So as you can see, I'm insane, and that's good writing. I feel like the Twilight Zone is such a famous show. I mean, even if you've never seen it, I'm kind of assuming most people have a vague idea of what it is, or at least know the opening do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do thing. And I feel like since it is such a famous show, people have almost forgotten about what it actually is. They remember the idea of the Twilight Zone and all the, spoofs and various things that have been done off of it, but they forget about the actual original show. The reason all that has become sort of something you can make fun of is because the original show was very popular, and the reason the original show was popular was because it was very good. Anyway, all of the Twilight Zone is on Netflix if you want to give it a try, and I highly suggest you do. But it's interesting to think that maybe one day, even one day not that far away, The Hunger Games, or, Harry Potter, or another fairly recent popular series, is going to become such a trope that people aren't going to really remember the original that much. Alright, now I'm going to go do homework. I love you, goodbye.